All right, Shobi lesson 94. You should see this information there. And then turn your Bibles to 2 Samuel. Or no, 1 Samuel chapter 2, not 2 Samuel. It's 1 Samuel, but it's chapter 2. So we left off last time. Hannah had brought her child Samuel to the temple, to Eli, to be able to care for him there, and he was probably raised up by Levite parents or others who were there at the tabernacle. My mistake, not temple, but tabernacle. Okay. So we're going to pick it up here in chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 12. Okay. And right kind of where we left off. So this tells us a little bit more about Eli's family. We talked about Samuel's family. We had hinted about Eli's family, but not much. We knew their sons, Hophni and Phinehas. Chapter 2, verse 12. Now the sons of Eli were the sons of Belial. They knew not the Lord. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered sacrifice, the priest's servant came while the flesh was in seething with a flesh hook of 3 teeth in his hand. And he struck it into the pot, pan, or kettle, or cauldron, or pot. All that the flesh hook brought up, the priest took for himself. So they did in Shiloh, unto all the Israelites that came thither. Also, before they burnt the fat, the priest's servant came, and said to the man that sacrificed, Give flesh to roast for the priest, for he will not have sodden flesh of thee, but raw. And if any man said unto him, Let them not fail to burn the fat presently, and then take as much as thy soul desireth, then he would answer him, Nay, but thou shalt give it to me now, and if not, I will take it by force. Whereas the sin of the young men was very great before the Lord, for men abhorred the offering of the Lord. So we learn a little bit about Eli's family and some of the activities that were going on. To be called the son of Belial is not a good thing. I pray that no one ever has reason or opportunity to speak of me that way and of you that way. Son of Belial would be a worker of the devil. Eli is a high priest. That means, by birthright, to the lines of generations, his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, would also be priests and one day be high priests. And yet here they are being called sons of Belial. They were wicked. They had before them a beautiful privilege, an opportunity that hardly anyone in Israel would have, and that is to be the son of the high priest, and to learn from him, and to have a great position in all of Israel. And they threw it away because they were called sons of Belial. They obviously did not have any value, place any value on that. So we read here that learning a little bit about how the priests would get their food. It wasn't their task to have a field or to raise animals. No, they trusted and waited on the people for that. So it says here, when people would bring their thank offerings to the tabernacle, they would often sacrifice the animal and boil some of it and eat it. Okay? And the priests were allowed to take some of that boiled meat for themselves. That was God's way of caring for the priests and the Levites. That's how they would get their food. They would be able to take some of that food, and it looks like as though it's not a purposeful thing, but rather, whatever came out of the pot or whatever came off of the animal, that's what they took. They were happy with it. They were content. Okay? God's law does not allow the Levites to take the raw meat with their forks, nor meat with fat on it, because that had to be burned off, we read there. Okay, that's what had to happen. They were a picture, obviously, of God's. The sacrifices were a picture of Jesus dying on the cross. Okay, so, but we see here that that's not the case. Hophni and Phinehas must have been taking raw meat, meat with fat, because what does fat add to the meat? Well, it adds flavor, succulence, deliciousness. So they were more interested in pleasurable things than for sacrificing and doing without. So they wanted the raw meat and they wanted it with the fat on it. And if the people would not give it to them, either because they knew the rules or they didn't want to, Hophni and Phinehas would take it by force. They were robbing the people, and in a sense, they're robbing the Lord of his law and what he wanted. So that's what those sins were doing. Okay? Now, we need to know a little bit about Eli. So we're going to skip ahead to some other things that were going on. Look at verse 22. Skip ahead to verse 22 here in chapter 2. Let's read that there. Now Eli was very old, and heard all that his sons did unto all Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he said unto them, Why do ye such things? For I hear of your evil dealings by this people. Nay, my sons, for it is no good report that I hear. Ye make the Lord's people to transgress. We hinted at this before when we talked about Hannah looking as though she were drunk, a drunk woman in the tabernacle. Eli assumed that she was probably one of the wicked women that his sons Hophni and Phinehas brought in drunk to lay with them in the tabernacle. That wasn't the case with Hannah. But Eli knew, we read here, about the sins of his sons. What's the lesson we learn from Eli here? We learn what happens when a parent doesn't chastise and correct and punish their child. Eli would give a scolding. He'd give a warning. Now don't do that. Don't do that again. I saw you doing that, but don't do it again. And what did his sons do? Probably when they were young and father chastised them, they probably ran back snickering to their bedrooms or wherever. Dad told us not to do that again. Pfft, who cares what Dad says? He ain't going to do anything to us. Let's keep doing it. And they would do it over and over again. They learned very quickly. All father would do is give a scolding. He wouldn't spank them. He wouldn't chastise them and punish them as he should have, as God's word commanded him to do. Nope. Just a scolding. And you and I both know full well, boy, there's some times in life when we probably want our parents to give us a scolding. That's all they're going to do is give me a scolding? Yes. Okay? No punishments for me. They hollered at me, but that was it. I'm over it. They didn't take away any privileges. They didn't spank me. They didn't do any of that. All right. Now, what does that mean for you and for me? Well, it means we have to hope for something that's hard to hope for. And it's something we have to pray for, something that's hard to pray for. But that's this. We need to pray for. We need to ask for, and we need to hope for parents who love you, which they do. But love also means a firmness, and that they correct you. Maybe a grounding, maybe a spanking, maybe a losing of opportunities and privileges. Because if you have parents who don't do that to you, and you're like Hophni and Phinehas, they just scold you and then tell you can do nothing, so you can just know that you can do it again 5 days later and nothing's going to happen. The unfortunate situation that shows, and that is shown time and time again, eventually, just as Hophni and Phinehas' sons, or Hophni and Phinehas were, their sins were getting worse and worse and more wicked, until pretty soon they wanted nothing to do with the Lord and were doing whatever they felt was right because they knew their father wouldn't do anything to them. Did he kick them out of the tabernacle as he should have? No. He should have dragged those two sons by their ears or by their shirts and thrown them in front of the elders sitting at the gate and said, Judge my sons. Punish them for their sins and their wickedness. Cast them out of the church so that they will learn and know when they are apart from the church what they're missing. And then they will come back and ask for forgiveness. That's what Eli should have done, but he didn't. He let them continue being priests. He let them continue to work in the tabernacle. He let them continue doing whatever they wanted to do. And he put up with it. So that's a hard thing for you to ask your parents to do. Again, sitting when I was 13, 14, 15 years old, I remember seeing classmates of mine and thinking, wow, their parents let them do anything. I wish my parents were that cool. I wish my parents were that nice. They let them watch whatever they want to watch, listen to whatever they want to listen to, do whatever they want to do. Well, unfortunately for some of those kids that I had in my class, and they grew up and they went off and they want nothing to do with God anymore. Some of them having children with multiple husbands or wives, broken families, no peace and happiness, drugs, alcohol, everything else, because there was no discipline from mom and dad. And that's what we see with Eli here. He did not discipline his children as he should have. And so Hophni and Phinehas grow up living in sin. And these are the sins that they are doing. They're the sins that they are falling into. So you can be thankful for parents that correct you and chastise you and keep you from living that type of lifestyle. Off you go in that way. Now, verses 27 through 29 give us a little bit of how God says to Eli, because Eli has responsibilities too. I have responsibilities as a father in my home to punish my children. God expects that out of me too. Not just my children, obedience, but that's his command for me. And God has to come and he has to remind Eli of that here. Look at verses 27 through 29. And there came a man of God unto Eli and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Did I plainly appear unto the house of thy father when they were in Egypt in Pharaoh's house? And did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to offer upon my altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? And did I give unto the house of thy father all the offerings made by fire of the children of Israel? Wherefore kick ye at my sacrifice and mine offering, which I have commanded in my habitation, and honorest thy sons above me, to make yourselves fat with the chiefest of all the offerings of Israel, my people. So now judgment comes to Eli. Yes, those sons are living in sin and wickedness. But this prophet comes to Eli and says, Eli, God gave you the blessing of being the high priest through Aaron. Aaron, your forefather. And it continued down through the line of generations, Ebenezer and so on and so forth. And now you're throwing it all away. Why do you kick at me? God says it's as though you're kicking at me. You are holding your sons higher than me. Here's my law, which says chastise, punish, teach, correct, and instruct. And here's your sons. If they're below the law, you'll do those things. But no, Eli, you've put your sons above the law. They can do whatever they want. Here's the law down here, and it's nothing to them. Eli, you will have to pay for this too. This is a sin, Eli. So it is for your parents. If your parents don't chastise you and correct you, and hopefully when they have to correct you and chastise you, they express that. Son or daughter, this isn't just me being angry or upset with you because of this. This is God. This is God telling me as a parent that I have to punish you. I have to chastise you. Because if I don't, this is what's going to happen. And I don't want that to happen to you. And I don't want that to happen to me. And I love you. And so we're going to punish and correct you so that both of us learn the ways of the Lord. And that is what's going on here. So Eli was treating his sons better than he was treating God's word. And that was a sin. That was a shortcoming of Eli's. Samuel. Let's see what happens in the life of Samuel, though, who's living there. Thankfully, it doesn't appear as though this rubs off onto Samuel. Chapter 3, starting at verse 1, we'll see how God calls Samuel specifically. Verse 1, and the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli. And the word of the Lord was precious in those days, and there was no open vision. And it came to pass at that time, when Eli was laid down in his place, so he's sleeping, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see. And ere the lamp of God went out in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. And Samuel was laid down to sleep, that the Lord called to Samuel. And he answered, Here am I. And he ran unto Eli and said, Here am I, for thou calledest me. And he said, I called not. Lie down again. And he went and lay down. And the Lord called yet again, Samuel. And Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And he answered, I called not, my son. Lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. And the Lord called unto Samuel the third time, and he rose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. Therefore Eli said unto Samuel, Go, lie down. And it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. So Samuel went and lay down in his place, and the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel answered, Speak, for thy servant heareth. So we have that familiar story here. Samuel lying in his bed. Eli lying in his bed. And we read there for a long time the Lord had not spoken to anyone in Israel, probably because of their sins and the wickedness. But Samuel is growing. But he's yet never heard the voice of God. He's never spoken with God. He's never had a vision in that sense, in that way. Okay? So it was probably early in the morning, and God comes. Samuel, Samuel. Samuel hears his name being called and thinks, well, it must be old Eli, because he needs help. He's getting old in his age. His eyes are bad. So he goes to the high priest Eli. Oh, here am I. Eli tells him, what do you come in for? I didn't call you, son. Go back to bed. It's early in the morning. Probably imagine Samuel scratching his head. Oh, I thought I heard him calling my voice, but maybe it's a dream. Goes back and lays in his bed and maybe just falls asleep. Samuel, Samuel. Oh, I'm pretty certain I heard it this time. And he goes down to Eli. Here am I. You called. Eli once again says, no, son. No, I haven't called you. Go back to bed again. And you can imagine this time again, Samuel scratching his head, going back to bed, going, what? Now this is twice in one night. I'm pretty certain I heard my voice called, but all right. He lays back down in bed. And the third time, Samuel, Samuel. And he gets up and again, and Father Eli, I know I heard my name called. And now Eli perceives, Samuel. Samuel, my son. The Lord is finally speaking to you directly. When you go back to your bed, I want you to lie there. And the next time you hear your name called, don't get up out of bed and come to me. Say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. God is calling you, Samuel. He wants to speak to you and teach you. When you hear your name called, say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. For you are a servant of the Lord. And that's exactly what Samuel does. He goes back, and you can imagine now, being wide awake in bed. I don't know if Samuel fell asleep or not, but he hears his name called again. Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel lies there. He doesn't get up and run to Eli as he had done before. He says, Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Familiar verse you guys all learned when you're in Sunday school or preschool or kindergarten or whatever. Very simple, but yet powerful verse. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Something we should say each Sabbath day when we go into God's house. For the word that the minister brings to us is the word of the Lord. Okay? And then God gives to Eli a message here, or Samuel, but also in the sense Eli. Verse 11, the Lord said unto Samuel, Behold, I will do a thing in Israel, at which both the ears of every one that heareth it shall tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. When I began I will also make an end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. And therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli, that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice, nor offering forever. So what is the message here? The message is a message to Samuel about Eli, and that message needs to be relayed to Eli. God is going to come and punish you, Eli, and you know why. It's because of the behavior of your sons. You refuse to chastise them, restrain them, to stop them from sinning. A punishment will visit you. It will be death. Death to your house. You'll be cut off. No longer will you be the high priest and your children. You imagine having to go to your parents or your grandparents and tell them, Mom, Dad, Grandpa, Grandma, the Lord spoke to me last night, and He said He's going to kill your children and you. That is your punishment that He told me. But that's the heavy burden that Samuel has to bear here. Samuel had not listened to that prophet that came and told him. And now the message comes directly from the Lord. All of Israel will hear what will happen. Their ears are going to tingle, it says. What is the reaction? Well, let's see here. Verse 15, And Samuel lay until the morning, and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. And Samuel feared to show Eli the vision. So he was afraid, but he still did it. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. And he answered, Here am I. And he said, What is the thing that the Lord had saith unto thee? I pray thee, hide it not from me. God do so to thee, and more also, if thou hide anything from me, and all the things that he said unto thee. And Samuel told him every whit, and hid nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord, let him do what seemeth good. Although his sons were foolish and wicked and sons of Belial, we see here Eli, although he had faults and although he had weaknesses, he is a man of God, and he knows. Just as Job said, The Lord hath given, the Lord hath taken away, blessed be the name of the Lord. So Eli says something along those lines here. If this is what the Lord's will is, then let it be done. This is God. God speaking here. And it seems good to God, and so it should seem good to me. Okay. Verse 19, And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and did let none of his words fall on the ground. And all Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again in Shiloh. For the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. So the fame of Samuel, his wisdom, his knowledge, his understanding, his communing with God, that began to spread through all the land. So that all men knew Samuel would be a great prophet one day. God is using Samuel in that way. So they must confess that. So, poor, unfortunate Samuel in the sense of living with Eli and Hophni and Phinehas, and living in this time of Israel in which there's wickedness and sin. But God will bless the work of Samuel. It says he did let none of his words fall to the ground. In other words, the words of Samuel were not wasted. They were good. God was using the words of Samuel. They were the words of God, and they would be a blessing on God and the work of Samuel here in the future. So we'll see more things that go on in the lives of the Israelites and how Hophni and Phinehas die in our next lesson, because the Lord has spoken and it will happen. We'll see that in the next lesson.